Hello, my name is Terry. I live in Scotland and I'm in my early 60s and age. I thought, oh my God, how does that creep up on you? But it has. Well, I remember way back when I was a student and a young lassie in the 70s, first of all, and I was really aware there was a group of women, obviously older than me, that were winning all these rights. And I thought, ooh, the only way is up. And at university, when I went there, we actually got lectures on women's studies back in the good old day. It was actually a man that did it, but hey ho, but he was absolutely brilliant. I just, we're just getting there. We're getting more and more things happen, good things happening. And he says, believe you me, in the battle of the sexes, the men will find a way back. And I'm thinking, surely not, surely not. Then spin on it. And oh, we also got a bit about this dude called Foucault, and I thought, oh, what a load of rubbish is that, and all this. But that was creeping in. Then I had my kids really young, forgot about a lot of that, and then I became aware there was funny things going on in the background, just little strange things. I thought, what's happened to women? But all of these were sort of sides because you go on, you have your kids, you start working and all that. And then about 10, 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, in the early days of Twitter, I remember hearing about this terrible woman, Megan Murphy. I thought, oh, she's very against trans people. Ooh, how terrible. Because I had a trans friend. I thought, ooh, what she said. And all she said was that you can't change sex. And I thought, well, of course you can't. Totally agreed. And that's, as soon as you open one little lid of it, it's just like, oh my God, what's going on here? So that must have been. And just before then, I was quite involved in politics in the Scottish independence referendum. Very much enjoyed it. Um, I did notice at the time, obviously, we were all on a bit of a high and then it all collapsed. It was like, ugh. But at the time, we were doing this thing called a Festival of Politics, and I got together with one of my mates. He was actually trans. He'd been a man for 50 odd years and then got a GRC. I didn't know him. I only knew him after he got his GRC. But anyway, lovely person. And we used to do these festival of politics together. I think we did two or three. And the first one was about the referendum. And he was old school Labour, but he came down the side of independence. Fantastic. It was just so vibrant. And anyway, 2 years after that, he turns to me. There was three of us involved, says, ooh, let's this year our theme be feminism. I remember thinking, oh, that's really nice of a man to think of the women, because it's still in my head. I suppose naturally you never think you can be nice to somebody quite clearly and have friends. But I thought, oh, that's odd. Anyway, never thought any more of it till the Megan Murphys when she got hounded on Twitter, and that's when I went down the rabbit hole. Also about that same time, because I joined the SNP, and I'd noticed at one conference folk were coming along with these t-shirts with I'm a trans ally, and we were looking at each other, where's this all come from all of a sudden? And all of a sudden this seemed to invade the party. Just about that time, 2017, 18, about that time as well, Joanna Cherry, who was brilliant, was getting a hard time, although it was just before the trans stuff. I think she started getting a hard time because she was pushing for independence. Even back then, Nicola was putting the lid on things. And of course, Joanna being this wonderful, intelligent woman who was actually a QC at the time, and Nicola being a bit of a failed lawyer, maybe there was an ego thing, I don't know, feeling a threat, these insecure people. But it wasn't so long after that when Joanna Cherry spoke up and the hounding she got. And I knew some of the folk doing it, and I just knew them to be careerist little toads. So I left that party. Well, Joanna Cherry, who was terrible. Her and her head of staff office were accused of bullying. She was also treated terribly down in Westminster by Ian Blackford. It just felt like Nicola had given the nod and the wink to the wannabe up and coming careerist stroke bullies in the party and I saw it all over Twitter. Also in a less sort of obvious version at conferences, I'd say to people I sort of knew, not my main gang, we were all down to earth activists, the ones that were more in with the party, and the careerists, they had the noses in the air, but we were just activists. They wanted independence as opposed to the party first. The story going round was, oh, Joanna's not a team player. I thought, well, I didn't like this. So the party never stood up for her. I thought, I don't want anything to do with this. So I left. But we carried on. I then got to meet folk like, well, it was maybe before then, Jean from Aberdeen. That's when we first came across each other. No surprises. She was a bit of a rad femme as well, you know, and a few of my good mates. So the next thing was, before COVID, there was the Twitter groups, you know, the shoppers groups. So we were all put into groups, and it was so nice. The first, well, just before that, I think it was maybe the same time, there was an event with Mandy Rhodes. She came up to RGU, which is the university in Aberdeen, and gave a brilliant talk. And I bumped into some folk that had been in the SNP that had left over this, and they told me about the terrible bullying they'd had at local branch level over their sex is real views. So it had only got worse in the party. And, you know, some were hanging on by their fingertips, some had left, some had been booted out. It was quite horrendous. And then we all met all these folk that knew each other over Twitter with funny names and everything. We met in real time. So that was really nice. Then we started organising and having stalls. We just got together, just got to put up a stall out. We clubbed together, got money, did leaflets. But it soon became apparent they seemed to be very psychic, that they knew where we were going to be, and they come along and bully us. It wasn't nice at all. Actually, I'm just wondering when the shoppers groups actually got going. I think it got into a bit of a really very active round about the time of the last Holyrood elections, which might have been 25 years ago, wasn't it? So maybe it was about touch of COVID. I don't know. Maybe in one, you know, there was a lockdown, then it was left off, and then there was a lockdown. So I think we maybe met in between that in real time. So the shoppers groups were set up by this woman called Shirley, and she'd noticed loads of activity on Twitter with women throughout Scotland wanting to connect. So basically, she says, get in touch with me, tell me your region, whatever. And that's how she set us all up. So we all got into local groups. It was great. Then folk in England wanted to do it. So she went and did that as well. And I think from that came the Women's Rights Network, but that was way down the road for me. So we were just doing our shoppers group. But at the time, we found out how they got us rumbled was because that, you know, that awful Beth character that was part of the Holyrood Brigade that Nicola turned round to and clapped, and that Alex, what's his name, Cole Hamilton, said, "We've did it for you, Beth." The one who was since revealed with swords and axes and porn stuff, saying he was going to punch a turf or kill a turf. He'd managed to infiltrate into our group. He got a woman to pretend it was him, and it was quite awful. So it really was awful. Some of the more smart turfs were onto it and got him kicked out. We got back anyway, ha ha ha. But then he unmasked himself, so that gave us a bit of the heebie-jeebies. But that's in the past now. So that's how they were finding out where we were. But funnily enough, we were very much women standing up for women, but a couple of us were getting riled. So two guys we know, they just came along and they just stood along. But they could tell the difference between men and women then. They didn't come up and give us hassle then, which was very, very interesting. So we had good fun with the stalls and that. Then it all got quite heated round about the GRR debate. But beyond that, I started going to rallies in Glasgow and Edinburgh, which were absolutely fantastic. and the energy coming off those women, it was just amazing. Afterwards as well, we all went to the pub and connected, and I goes, oh, you're so and so from Twitter. And so it was absolutely lovely meeting these women who'd all been, especially all sort of shared about how in COVID and over the years we'd fester away going, and Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m., the Women's Declaration and WDI, they do put on the Zooms. They were amazing. And that's where more pennies were dropping about how this was a top down, sort of globalist Western world. They were spreading it all about. And it was just like, it's happening all over. This is all planned. It was awful. So meeting the women in the wild, in reality, was brilliant, and the energy, and it was so nice. I don't think I'd ever been to an entire women's gathering like that, and just feeling it electrifying. There was also the Holyrood campaign. We did our best with respect my sex if you want RX, and we were battering away and battering away. It was hard going because, especially if you're in Scotland, a lot of things fall over the constitutional divide. Not with us women who come together. We had such a laugh because one of the slogans in the independence campaign from the unionist side was better together. And one of the best friends I've made in this, she's lovely. She's a total unionist Tory, and I just give her a hug and say, we're better together. So we were all just one strength of mind, one purpose, it was lovely. So we carried on doing things. I mean, I used to sit frantically crocheting suffragette headbands that would give away at rallies. Enjoyed doing that. Facebook, Twitter. First time I was called a name. The only one that really stung was bigot. I thought, oh, don't like that. And then you get the usual sort of fascist, racist, Nazi. I'm thinking, something. I've never voted Tory. I don't think I've even voted Lib Dem. So I was scratching my head thinking, I'm a socialist. This is worrying. So it was interesting times. I was a bit cheesed off. There was some folk that just thought it was a minor issue. And I thought, it's not a minor issue. If you can deny reality, you're on a slippery slope. And they'd frame it as, oh, this is only 0.01%. No, 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 no. It impacts mostly on 51% of the population, which is women. It's got huge implications for children, massive. And to be quite honest, men, it affects you too. I must admit, though, on the stalls, the demographic that were most supportive were men. Whether it's because they were interested in politics and they were ahead of the game, I don't know. But there was one guy who ran a sports and fitness studio. He says, I can't believe this is happening. Well done, you. Do you know the difference in strength? Yeah. And in our local group, I'd say most of the women came out of the independent side of things because we were avidly reading. There's a website called Wings Over Scotland, which has got fantastic journalism, obviously very pro-independence, but I mean, the articles he did were amazing. It's the best journalism ever on it. And early doors, it could have even been back about 2017, maybe before then, he'd started posting about this. We didn't find out till later. It was through when he was younger, he lived in Brighton for a while, I think, and his best friends were lesbians, and he saw how their spaces were being eroded. He did one post which was very unlike him, which saw about the emotion of it all. But he was quick onto this. He had loads and loads of articles, and some folk in the Independents would go, oh, why do you keep posting about this guy? What does this matter? This won't impact. And he had the clarity of vision to see how it would impact on so many things. So yeah, Wings doesn't care. He just posts what he thinks, and he's right. He's been proved so right on this in particular. So I think that's why, over in America they post it as, I don't know what to call it, Republican, Democrat, or they go down the religious divide. I think in Scotland, that's why so many, I mean, folk like Caroline McCallister and that, she came out of that as well. She got a hard time I think she was women's officer in the SNP, got the SNP Women's Pledge going, and they were treated really badly. So she became a sort of very vocal, I wouldn't say leader, because Caroline would never claim herself to be like that, but her voice is unmistakable. She's even on that podcast, is it? Something to do with the JK hounding of JK, the witch trials of JK Rowling. As soon as you hear her voice, she's there. And the Women Won't Wheesht put on a lot of demos, like Kelly J. Kelly J's another one. Oh, as soon as you come across her, I think the first time I saw Kelly J was when there was the billboard in Liverpool and it reached the news. And I thought, surely they're not saying, a trans woman is a woman. Surely, God, they haven't made that leap of faith. And she was getting into trouble for putting up the dictionary definition. It was the big poster, the billboard she put up. I think it was at the Labour Party conference. Might have been about 2018, 19. It was a Labour Party conference, I think in Liverpool. Sorry, Kelly, agree if it's wrong. It's Liverpool, Manchester. It was up north, and it was woman, adult, human, female. She was ordered to take that down. So that reached the news. So I thought, ooh, who is this woman? Ooh, I want more of that. So of course, then you're on to Kelly J's YouTube and her sheer. I think she knows fear. If she does it, she can't stop herself. She's got to do this. And one thing I learned in politics and in this movement, you're not going to agree on everything. But I tell you, if you agree on that one thing, a woman is an adult human female, women have the right, sex-based rights, and leave those children alone, like Pink Floyd said, that's what it is. Start reality and build from there. Have third spaces if you want, campaign for them. Meanwhile, I'd seen it creeping through um, local authorities, just how they were flouting the rules and building new schools, community centres, doing their so-called gender-neutral toilets, and how isn't this wonderful? Completely flouting building regulations, even when it was pointed out to them, even when parents campaigned. I thought, this is, well, dodgy. Then there was that Dentons document, which probably, if you don't know what it is, check it out. I think it was a Spectator article, and I think it was a solicitors, whatever. They managed to spread it all under the radar. Graham Linehan's brilliant on this when he speaks how they managed to get this trans stuff slipped through under the radar when they had the big vote on, I think it was gay marriage and prostitution, and that third thing they slipped it in under the radar. Yeah, in Ireland. And of course, I just love Father Ted. So when it got to meet Graham, he was staying in a hotel, one of the rallies in Glasgow. I thought, oh, get to meet Graham. And what a lovely guy. But see, meeting him for real, you could see how it had really got to him. I mean, he was on the verge. You know, when you can see that somebody's tense, but they're driven and they cannot stop. And I thought, God, you poor guy. You know, you've had your whole livelihood, your personal life, humiliated, trashed, and, where were your friends? I am very, very lucky. Oh, nearly all my friends have agreed with me, and if they don't, well, who were they anyway? And I can part things. If folk disagree, well, let them think about it. And my family, it's all fine. Just one or two on the periphery. I just say if it's a man, oh, you could have the next baby, or you know what I mean. I say the odd thing, but I'm never going to fall out. What is the point falling out? So I'm very lucky. My mom is in her 80s. She's to hear me all going on about, especially during lockdown. Of course, she goes to church. It's her social groups afterwards. She does this stuff, and so she really enjoys dropping in the odd bit. So she's turfing all up the 80, 90-year-olds up north. That can't be happening. Oh yes, it is, says my mom. So yeah, there's been some real enjoyment. But I tell you, as you can all appreciate there, sometimes you wake up in the morning and go, oh no, it was like, it hurt my head, the assault on reality, not just women's rights, safeguarding the law. It hurt my head. And then along came the Supreme Court ruling. You know something? I could have gone to that, but I can't. Was I working? I think I was working, but I could have taken time off. And I always thought, I don't know if I could face going down to Edinburgh because it would have been Edinburgh I'd have gone to, and we lost. I think I'd just lose it. So I'll come back to Hollywood. What happened then? This is what put me off. And I can't believe I missed that magic moment because since then, even though it's not over and I'm bloody annoyed just now, that really was impactful. It was euphoric. But as I said, I didn't go because I went to the GRR vote, which would have been Christmas 2022. Well, I've been to Holyrood a couple of times uh, at the rallies, which are absolutely brilliant, some great speakers. I kind of insisted on taking my saltire and waving that because they tried to paint it out, oh, just a bunch of Tories or Unionists making it party political. Oh no, it wasn't. This was Scotland, the home of the Enlightenment, and it was disgraceful what they were trying to do. So that was my personal reason for taking the saltire. They were bringing shame on a rational nation. Anyway, so I thought, right, I'm going along to this debate. It didn't look good, but I thought, surely they can't shove this through. So there was a candlelit rally outside the night before, and then there was 2 days of it. The day I was in, it was ridiculous. They confiscated my saltire, which actually I got Alex Salmond to sign. I says, are you really confiscating that? Says, former First Minister sign that. Oh, you can't take that in. I thought, jeepers creepers. How embarrassing. Anyway, of course, Alec didn't have no truck with any of this. So that was all confiscated. We went up to the gallery and hearing their pathetic speeches. And then there was a pause for ages. There's some point of order or whatever. So there's us women on one side, further across in the middle, we're the chosen trans lot, you know. You just need to go onto Twitter or YouTube to see that seven lot men in dresses sitting there glowering, you know, and cheesing at the same time because they knew they were going to win. But looking down, what struck me was Nicola was on her feet over with the Greens and her pals. You know, Nicola and her cabal were over there. Ash Regan, hooray for Ash, strong, courageous woman. She was over chatting to the Tories and the other folk that were supporting her. But the vast majority of the SNP, they were like naughty school kids. They were just like glued to the seats with their heads down. They were cowards. They weren't looking anywhere. They were just sitting like that. Same with some of the Labour. Some of the Labour went with Ash. You know, you could see the wokey side with Nicola over that side. You could see the folks saying, nah, 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 this is an affront to women. And the vast majority of SNP and some Labour sitting there like cowards. So there was a couple of instances like they were looking at us women, you know, the staff, like hawks. Like if anybody went into back, like that, what's going to come out of that bag and nonsense. Of course, it went on and on. I goes to the toilet, right? Walked into the toilets. Of course, two men in dresses in there smirking at me. I thought I could do a few things here. I could create merry hell. I thought I'd not given them the satisfaction, but I'm going to complain about this, which I did. I wrote in and complained later and it went through all the official channels. Of course, it all came back. You knew there's nothing wrong in that. So it's just an embarrassment and a joke. You know, we fought hard for that parliament and it's just some sort of bloody woke fest. So that was so devastating. I missed the day when the vote went through, but I watched it from home. So that made me depressed. Then, hallelujah, the person who least likely I thought I'd be cheering for joy for, Alistair Jack, the posh flipping lord or whatever he is, Secretary of State for Scotland, called it in. So here you go, the most independent-minded woman was cheering on Alistair Jack for calling it in. I thought, serves you bloody right, because you'll be aware that in Scotland certain things are reserved, some things are devolved. The Equality Act is reserved. I thought, this is smashes straight through. For Women Scotland been saying that. A whole bloody lot have been saying that, but they didn't listen, did they? They just thought, I don't know what the hell they were playing at. So then, but I was so chuffed with it, and then spin on the Supreme Court thing. It was like, woohoo! But I think since then, some folk think, oh, fight is won. But we all know different. It's a year on. Bridget Phillipson, a lot of them. So we still carried on meeting in that, but we thought, no, no, we're going to have to up our game a bit again. So some great women who shall not be named, just in case they're shy, in Glasgow are putting together the Respect My Sex campaign. We've already been out and about. We've been into MSP's offices. We've made leaflets. Hang on, we're going to be contacting all these MSPs and the wannabes. This isn't going away. And I hate to bring in a controversial person, love him or loathe him, Trump getting elected in America, because we know that all this came from America. We do. Also, the detransitioner lawsuits. We do know that when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. So some of the reality coming back in, as I say, you can love or loathe Trump or whoever gets in there, but if it ends some of this bollocks, well, silver linings and all that, but it's a long fight. It's longer than what I thought it would be. On a personal level, I've got granddaughters. They're not at secondary school yet, and I just want this rubbish out of education. Because, and it's quite funny when you speak to a lot of the women involved in this. Most of them I speak to, they're all tomboys. Like I was a tomboy, and we're all saying, what if this bollocks had been around when we were younger? I know some are lesbian and some are not, and I mean, I'm not gay. But I remember thinking, oh, it's better fun being a boy. You get to do this, that, and the next thing. You could see with all the mental health issues, Reddit, online stuff, how kids can be sucked in. And it's wicked, actually. And the most wicked person that awful is it Jeffrey, somebody in America. Jeffrey Marsh. He's like the modern day child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And then the penny drops. They want all these kids to go down that route to legitimize these old men fetishists so they can point at kids, oh, it's real, it's real. Well, we all know that most of them are AGP. I mean, how many middle aged women in their 40s and 50s suddenly want to become men? It just doesn't happen, does it? Does it? No, it's a fetish. Is it Mary Kate Delvey on Twitter? She's so funny. She's so bonny, and she just nails it, going, "It's a fetish! It's a fetish!" And yeah, she's well worth a follow. And I don't know about you, but I think if you've got humour on your side and all the pole-faced Puritans are, I think it shows which side to be on. But also as well, there's a lot of kink going on, and the king of the kinks seem to be the Green Party, and you can't help but I'm now of the opinion, and I used to think the Green Party were semi-decent. See, when it comes to election, I'm like, anybody but the Greens, anybody, they're flipping nuts. And I think there's a, like, I don't know, maybe I'm being too, because I worked in child protection, but there's alarm bells over a lot of this, a lot of it. Oh, I worked in the third sector back in the 90s. It was at the nicer end of child protection. It was in the third sector. So it was more positive, supporting parents and young families. And the thing that would always strike me is how a lot, we supported nearly always mothers because they had care of the children, whether they were still married or single parents. Did get the odd guy with custody, but there wasn't many. And what I did notice was the amount of mothers that they were triggered when their child reached the age they were when they were abused, and they got upset, and it was just like they suddenly realized it wasn't their fault. They looked at their 5-year-old, 6-year-old and thought, it wasn't, how could it be their fault? So it wasn't my fault, because they were blaming themselves for the abuse. And that's all these folk that say, oh, they wait so many years, no, 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 no. It's only when they see how naive and vulnerable and easily manipulated their own child could be that they realise that it's not their fault. And I saw the long-lasting damage of child abuse on people. We were put on a lot of courses as well, and it made me so wary of certain individuals, certain men, and just looking for maybe over wary, put it like that. But some of the stuff the Green Party's doing, I'm not saying they're all sort of paedophiles, I don't mean that, but it's like opening the door to sort of lowering the age of consent, things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I know some of their activists like to go to kink fetish stuff and that. It's been documented on Twitter. I thought, oh, just leave them up, leave the kids alone. You know, Peter Tatchells of this world, who I used to admire. I didn't know much about him, obviously, when it all came out with his nonsense. And then, you know what I really object to as well? The conflating of sexuality with this, because it's got damn all to do with it. So, and I don't know if I even like that word now, community, this community, that community, but you know, gay community, for want of a better word, how often they've been manipulated into thinking this is okay. Got to know Neil Hanvey a bit of the last couple of years, great politician. Um, you know, he's a gay man and he's on the ball. He knows how much this is can come in and damage the community. And the thing when I thought, oh my God, this is some sort of weird ideology, I never ever thought I'd see a female claim to be a man and then hit on a man. I mean, yeah, you get men doing that all the time, but I never thought that. And I thought by then, because women have got more sense. I thought, jeepers creepers, they're going into sauna parlours pretending to be men with mastectomies. I thought, are you off your head? That wouldn't have happened years ago. Not a chance. That's an ideology. It's just wrong, wrong. And I think there's a whole generation that's been, and everywhere you go, everything you see, there's flag this, flag that, and it's just, I feel like, you know, when you try to give a cat a tablet and it's like, and you've got to stick in the mouth and hold the throat and wiggle their throat. I think that's what's been done to the public, you know? Still, too many folk don't realise how insidious it can be, but we'll see. A lot of things connected. Then you've got the whole DEI stuff, and you can see it coming through more. Also, what you can see, not that I want to go down this path because it's quite a controversial one, but they did try certain, not just the council, but other things as well, to try to use the sort of so-called trans rights. If you objected and said women's rights, you're called a bigot, Nazi, fascist, racist. Um, I mean, the one that epitomised the most was Nicola Sturgeon in her broom cupboard speech. Um, if you haven't seen that, it's well worth a watch. It's hilarious, actually, when she does this message. I think it was during COVID, and she says you'll find a lot of these people that claim it to be women's rights. It's no such thing. You'll often find are bigots. And also, as well, a lot of them will be racists or fascists, and oh, should it all clumped together. So there's a lot of teaming with, if you stand up for women's rights, you're a fascist, racist, far right, that's the thing. You're far right for anything now. So I think since the Supreme Court, I think they're a bit careful because the law's the law, but they're already segueing into race or religion. Maya Forster said that straight after that judgment. She says, and I think you'll find they'll start pivot to one of the other factors, protected characteristics. Funnily enough, they won't pivot to disability because that'll actually cost them, will it? You know, and I don't know what I'm like with all the equalities. Yes, people need protected, but the ones that have suffered the most are the disabled, and you know, who's caring about them? But never mind. Yeah, so it's interesting times. A few years ago, my son-in-law, he was coming out with, he got sucked a bit into, you know, Reddit or whatever, and he said to me, he said something about, oh, well, a lot of these folk are marginalised and suicide rates. I went, oh, is that right? I said nothing because I know his personality types, isn't it? I know he's got a very strong logical sense or whatever. I thought, oh, give him 6 months. See what he comes back to me with. Well, He's a total. It was. He's into mixed martial arts, and he was horrified with that woman in America who got beaten up by that guy pretending he was a woman, fractured her skull. So that sent him. He's top turf, you know. Um, his wife, my daughter, she's not really political, but she's like, you know, nothing's going to affect my girls. Very kind, lovely person, but nothing's going to come in way my girls. So, no, my family are pretty much on board. And those that are maybe a bit more distant, they're not, shall we say, fanatical. They're just like, don't know much. Oh, just a bit, oh, let's be kind. And to be honest, people like that, you just leave them as time marches on. They'll suss it. But I've got nobody out and out, a very distant relative on my ex-husband's side. Um, his half sister married somebody in the forces, and I'm still friendly with that side of the family. I was shown a picture by ex-husband's brother. He says, "What do you think of this?" And it was a picture of two women dressed as suffragettes from a distance. It looked like two women. I looked closer. I goes, "That's a man." He goes, "Yeah, they got married, so obviously he's in a fetish, and they're dressing as suffragettes, the pair of them together." He says, "That's insulting to women." Oh, I agree with you there. So yeah, it's in the family, but a vast distance, and they probably wouldn't know me if I walked down the street. No, the closest was my friend, who sadly now has died, who was actually a very nice person, but yeah, it was sort of like some of my Kelly J stuff, but was probably scared to say in public, you know? So, for want of a better expression, old school transsexuals that just want a quiet life. And to be honest, all the nutters have spoilt it for them to a certain extent. Although I would never, ever, ever go down the she, her, him, he, whatever pronouns. Nah, nah. If you're a man, you're a man. You're a woman, and I'm not. I'm not doing anything. I'm sorry if it offends you. I don't care, as Jermaine Clear says. He'd gone through the whole shebang and this gender recognition certificate before I met him, but I'd heard of him. So by the time I'd heard of him, he'd trans, not that you can trans, but a pleasant, biddable person, wouldn't hurt a fly, whatever. And we used to do quite a lot of activist stuff together. It's quite good fun. And I wouldn't say this whole thing affected our friendship. We never argued about it. And he knew what I was up to, and I knew he was in the Greens, but he was quite, I think he was very supportive of women. But you know something that I used to notice? It was always on Facebook, and even before all this came out, it was always supporting the Native American Indian. If you were the victim, it was all the support, you know? What do you call that? The something Olympics. What do they call it? Not the victim. So probably one of the best adverts for being a nice trans person. But to be quite honest, by the end of it all, I was almost thinking, can't you say something? Because kids are getting medicalised. But, you know, when somebody's older and not well, you just don't do that, do you? So you've got to sort of keep your humanity, but at the same time. And I think the good thing about how this struggle, for what a better word, has gone on and on and on, is more folk have woken up to it. And I'm way past, you know, when you post something, oh, you can't trust that. It's in the Daily Express, not the Daily Mail and the Times. I thought, well, let's face it, nearly all the papers are captured or owned by multimillionaires. And if they're telling the truth, the other big thing that's coming to the fore, which I've been aware for ages, well, years and years, mostly thanks to Julie Bindel, you know, stuff around the grooming gangs. And I thought, no, speaking up about that as well. But that's all getting conflated in. If you say anything, you're racist. Actually, no, it's young lassies. And I don't know if the BBC would make it now, you know, the documentary, Three Girls. It was brilliant. And Maggie, oh God, Maggie Oliver, all the work she's done. So I was well aware of all this. I was even on a discussion group this morning saying, and I'm a Catholic, called out the Catholic Church at the high. I mean, the priests were doing it, but it was a bloody cover up and who's benefiting and whose power. So I thought, why can't we call this out? They're all, in the pockets of the Labour Party. Not much wonder they've stuck their heels in. And yesterday they're trying to dumb it all down or take away certain. I thought, no, if bad things happen, you need to address it. You know what I mean? And because I see some vulnerable young lassies, you can just see them falling for some of these young Romeo types, and before you know it, bit of drink, bit of drugs, and oh, hellish, hellish. And it's the police as well, and I just think, how the hell could you arrest a young underage girl up to her eyes on drink and drugs, surrounded by 6 old men, and it's the girl you're taking in charge? So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. Then I was obviously disgusted at the prostitution bill getting it was the what do you call it, the Nordic model. Oh, and by the way, I remember being at the SNP conference about 10 years ago when we were pushing all that, and it was SNP policy. And look at it now. And I don't think it's just peevery over Ash Reagan. It's all money. It's all that liberated money globalist bullshit. So I think hell meant a lot of them. Hell meant. So I wrote to my MSP, because you had to put letters out to MSPs. Are you going to support Ash's bill? Whatever. And then I get this back pretty much from one of them who shall be nameless. And no, I says, oh, I was there when you were sporting it 10 years ago. I can only guess what's changed. Money? Money, is it? Money? I thought, screw you. The rallies are brilliant. Kelly J's rallies are brilliant. Let women speak. So I've been to a few in Scotland, been to Glasgow a couple of times, been to Edinburgh. That was hellish. The police. That was just absolutely awful. It was disgraceful. Well, the first Glasgow one was absolutely incredible, but it was just after the whole Isla Bryson. The Nicola and the SNP government were putting the double rapist into a women's prison, and there was a huge outcry, so it got changed. So just after that, it was all at the same time, but it was within 2, 3 weeks of that. So the press was still buzzing with this Isla Bryson rubbish. So the Glasgow rally was on in George Square. So this was going to be big, and big it was. I think there was over 1,000 there. Police did a fantastic job, kept the trans activists well over the other side. I think was there a helicopter or a drone? Anyway, they took fantastic precautions. It was absolutely brilliant. Um, I think was I on one of the guards then? Well, what do you call them, stewards? Maybe not. I can't remember. Anyway, I've been a steward at a couple of things, so that was fantastic. But call me cynical. I don't think she wanted bother after, or the bad press after the Isla Bryson thing. So the next one I went to was Edinburgh. That must have been maybe a year later, so we're maybe speaking about 2 years ago now. Completely different. I remember arriving because I was going to be one of the stewards or marshals. I can't mind what we're called. Whether you get your high vis jacket. So I got into Edinburgh early and I walked past the site. I thought, bloody hell. The Mustic is about the only time they get up early, isn't it, to occupy the place. And I thought, they've taken over where we're supposed to be with all the painting on the stones and everything. What are the police doing about this? So by the time we got back, marshals met and we walked back in, they were all there shouting and bawling at us. And the police had put up all these metal barriers. And honestly, there was about 25, 30 of us women, and we were all herded into this pen with them shouting and bawling. Honestly, for a minute, I thought, I don't like this. I don't like this. It got better when, the public started arriving, but they were still bawling and shouting at us. Now, some of the women there were older. Some of them were getting over cancer. Some of them were on sticks. And this lot were pretty aggressive and violent. The police seemed to do nothing. And I think even more women would have come along. But if you were going past that and you heard that shouting and bawling, you'd have walked on by. It was scary, couldn't hear a thing. Anyway, there was loads of complaints about that, which the police managed to duck and dive. Then there was Aberdeen, which the police let them again. They were supposed to be in one other bit, and we were, a distance. There was a no man's land. Police just let them charge across, shouting abuse. They'd already, Aberdeen Trades Union Council had put out messages to all its union members saying there's bigots, alt-right, all this lot, come into Aberdeen, don't let the racist fascists win. Oh, it was absolutely ridiculous, I couldn't believe the sort of guff that went on. There was stickers that went up round town calling us for everything. I thought, Jesus. Then the council put pressure, so we heard, on our venue to cancel us. And Kelly J was looking into that. So it's just a piece of nonsense, they're just pathetic. So there was that. Then the next one, so that was three. Then there was the one last summer in Glasgow, which a lot of you might have heard about. George Square, which is amazing for a rallying point, it's closed just now. So it was Kelvin Grove, which is the heart of Patrick Harvey, Green Party, MSP is a complete and utter. Patrick, no debate, Harvey. He's one of the ones that started off. You can't speak about it. That should tell you all you need to know. Anyway, they shouted and heckled us there. It wasn't so bad. The police kept them back a bit. But then there was a rumpus in the venue afterwards and they were offended. Oh, for God's sake. So that got cancelled. I think Kelly J is carrying on with some litigation or something to do with that. Meanwhile, as well, there's been the Women Won't Wheesht have done little ones. Oh, I shouldn't say little, they're still pretty damn impressive. Good ones. Dundee, that we got heckled about there. They've done Aberdeen, where a woman got attacked. She was all right, by the way, but it wasn't nice either. Oh, and again, the police let them come towards us, seriously. So there's been things like that. There's been leafleting, there's been all sorts. We keep ourselves busy, you know. I remember way back as a student doing stuff on student grants. There was the American nuclear weapons down. It was Edsel or stuff. Used to do that with CND. There was little things like that going on in the background. But then the independent stuff, yeah, that made me a bit fearless, if I'm honest. Although to be honest, the demographic there wasn't too bad. And the worst thing that ever happened in the independence referendum was somebody got an egg chucked at them. That was it. It was all very civil. I mean, folk got ratty and, but it was a walk in the park. Then after that, door knocking and canvassing with the SNP, that probably gave you more of an idea of how aggressive some folk can be because you were all over the place. Because in the independence referendum, the group I volunteered with, we were campaigning mostly working class areas, getting them out to vote. They were overwhelmingly for independence. But when you're out canvassing, you're sent to all areas. You could get abuse on the door there. Some folk racing you and calling you what for. But what's the point of being rude? I would never, if somebody came to my door, never be that rude. But it gave you a thick skin and it made you stronger to speak to the public. However, spinning onto this, I would say the vast majority of the public are for you, but if you do get it, if you get somebody against you, it's much, much nastier than the party political stuff. Yeah, in fact, leafleting and things like that, if folk come racing out the door, oh yeah, bigot, bigot, and it seems to be more heightened if there's folk against you, but it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I really don't care. So maybe that helped in a way. I think it also helped as well to find out that politics and this movement work on so many different levels. You've got it right high up and above. One thing that became clear to me when I went over to the Dublin Let Women Speak. The police there weren't too bad. They kept the trans activists and their gang much further away from Kelly J and us lot. But I went towards the area. I never caused trouble, but I thought, I'm just going to walk up and have a look. And I saw on our side three young guys. Now, they were definitely down to earth. They were North Dublin, and if you're familiar with Dublin, if you're North Dublin, that's the working class side, you know. So I was speaking to them, and two of them had I think one was married, one had a partner that wanted to come, but they were too scared to come. He says, "We're here for the women. We're supporting you. We're here for the women." He said, "Don't talk to me about that lot, Sinn Féin over there. We were Sinn Féin. They don't give a shit about women. They deny science. They've lost the plot." He could have been speaking about the SNP. It was spooky. It was really spooky. So, and I hear Plaid Cymru the same. So I'm like, oh, are they through all these sort of movements? Of course they are, aren't they? So that was really interesting. That it was really funny because we're supposed to meet in this pub afterwards. And I'm going, I knew Devlin, but I took the women the wrong way. We almost walked slap bang into them. There's a lot of them as well. Um, but I go to Ireland quite a bit. Over in the West Coast, it's not. There's more realists there, you know, in Ireland. But of course, they've still got chips on their shoulder about, you know, the Catholic Church, the abuse, the Magdalene laundries. So they've had the be kind stuff shoveled down their throats because women were treated badly there, you know. It's changed a lot. So it's really, as we know, it's the next big cause, you know, discriminated minorities. So I think, to be honest, most folk in Ireland probably are most folk like here. They just think it's rubbish. Yeah, I think the other thing that gave me a heads up is how to speak to folk that might disagree with you. I think some people are naturally better at that. I'm very much for if they're going to have a conversation and want to speak to you, I'll do it. If they're just there to argue, one tip I was given, just don't let them waste your time, move on. There's, and when it comes to voting things, and I think that's why it's so important. People have other issues that they rate much higher. I don't think they realise this is part of a connected agenda. It really is. It connects so much to other things. And I thought this will impact you, you know? So it's like joining those dots for people and showing that if you give up on this, what else are you going to give up on? I'd say just go for it. Um, Always doing at least twos. Never be on your own because it's good having a witness. One of my pals actually bought me a GoPro for the rally, which is really handy. I use it for other things. I don't think you need to do that. It's just he's a bit of a techie, and he thought, okay, I'll have that. Is make up your own leaflets. They can easy do. There's some of the groups now in England. They're producing stuff, really good stuff, and want to link in. I think my biggest tip, and this is no criticism of anyone or anything, is keep it as linear as possible. I've seen it in politics. I've seen it in activism that the cause can give you a real buzz, but within that, folk get a bit of attention, then it can be ego. So is always remember what the purpose is. And if there's any disagreements or anything or what to do, majority decision, and then you just go for it. And also the role of creativity, I think, is really good, especially for women, making things, doing things, sharing things. I love stickering myself. I much prefer Kelly J's stickers because they can't. Well, different local authorities have different rules, but you cannot get charged for stickering with her stickers because they're removable. So I'd say get onto her stickers. Also get some yourself. Hate to say it, some of the ones that aren't removable, technically, they could be even better, but I'm just saying you might get charged for that. Um, yeah, once we went into a shopping centre, stickering in the toilets. A few of us went up to the roof because we were going to do a big display with our adult human female flag over the rooftops, right? So we're going up, and we're just about to get out the lift when we were going out the doors to get onto the roof, and we heard this clicking sound, and the tannoy came over saying, "What are you doing?" In the lift operator, and he was locking the doors. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." We're like, oh, but then one of us thought it was ridiculous. Who the Chelsea. But technically that was private property, but we weren't doing anything wrong. So it was like, well, would he really turn the lift off? So we just straight down the lift and ran for it. I think as well, I think what gives me a lot of confidence is sort of semi-retired, so got my hands on my pension. Also, if I get kicked out of work or whatever, I've got my own place. I don't have the financial worries or commitments that a lot of younger women have. And I think in this movement, it's easier for older women to be more vocal because we've got less to lose. Plus, you get to stage where you don't give a flying fuck, do you? You just think, oh, you've seen it. You've seen enough of life to think you can't tell me off. No, that's wrong. You're not so easily controlled. Oh, and one of the activists, the trans activists, that shouted, you're all 40 and divorced. Ooh, actually, I'd take 40. They 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 always fall back on the slagging women off for their looks, and they forget that women over a certain age don't give a damn. Yeah, really. Is that what we're putting the face of the earth for? We fought all that in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. We're not having it. They can get stuffed. Actually, I quite like Kelly J for that because she does like doing her hair and her lippy and everything. But so what? She doesn't give a chuff either, does she? But something I tell my little granddaughters, I say, see all this be kind. No, 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 no. Be honest and always trust your mum and dad. Because there's too much pressure on females. I mean, you get to be nice, budge up, let them, and no, no, no. Enough off. Doesn't wash anymore, does it? Doesn't wash. And it's a great source of disappointment and disgust that in Scotland, a woman ends up in charge and completely trashes women's rights. Feminists to our fingertips. That's one thing that completely unifies all the women in Scotland in this movement. We don't like Nicola very much at all. At all. I wasn't very keen on being in a political party, if I'm honest, but I just thought that they had an intention of independence. It wasn't long before I kept seeing these things. I thought, really? 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 And then I was asked to stand for council because I wanted to get more women in. So I trots along. And this is probably why I don't like the DEI stuff. Um, they were wanting all women shortlists. And I'm about removing the barriers. But I thought, how would I like that if I was up against a guy? Not that I'm denigrating myself, but that candidate, if it was a blank screen, all on paper, and you just take one because one's got the XX and one's got the. I don't know if I believe in it. It's that equality of outcome, the equality of opportunity. And I think that DEI stuff it's been screwed over and trashed against some people, particularly women now. Because look at International Women's Day, it's full of men identifying as women. And they're better women, aren't they? And they're more marginalised women, aren't they? Oh, what a shame. Sympathy. Actually, do you remember that Rolling Stones song, Sympathy for the Devil? Some of it's like this, isn't it? Oh, feel sorry for the devil, feel sorry for me. I mean, there's a book I read once, The Sociopath Next Door. It's by a brilliant psychiatrist, Martha. Oh, I forget her second name, but it's really the Sociopath Next Door. Have a read, and it's all about the pity play. Poor me, poor me. They wangle you in, feel sorry for me, and you can see how that works much more on women than men. Men have got more. Oh, I'm not falling for that. I don't know what it is, but it's the empathy thing that we're supposed to have. Speaking of how everybody can be labelled far right these days, and of course it's happened to us women, hasn't it? I don't know if folk are aware, but there's huge campaigns. They're putting up these giant pylons. Basically, Scotland's got oodles of renewable energy. I'll come back to it. They shouldn't be trashing the oil and gas. That's a whole the green net zero stuff. Anyway, they're trying to get it over from the west coast, the north coast, right the way around Scotland, down the east coast and into England. When they get to England, they're going to put it underground. But in Scotland, it's all overground in massive, huge pylons, like 3, 4 times the size of the existing ones. So loads of community councils, irrespective of politics, are banding together complaining about this. Our energy minister, Gillian Martin, who used to be for Queens for Indy, that's another story in the referendum. Anyway, she's the energy minister now, and I think she might have subsequently met them, but she was refusing to meet with these community council because people objecting to this were far right. So if you object to giant pylons, you're far right. So it's anything's far right now. And the sad thing is, there will be some folk out there who are borderline racist. But see, when folk come speaking to me about concerns about their daughters, their granddaughters, because I've got friends who don't do politics, they don't like it. But in this past year or so, they're picking up things and they're speaking to me about it. Annoyingly, not many of them spoke about the women's issues, but there's other things they've got concerned about. But they're scared to speak up because everything's far right now. I think, but that's why in all these fault lines and politics, that's why I like sticking to the women's rights things. Because if you base things on reality and sex, you've got to start from there. Because if you don't, it's Orwell, isn't it? It's Orwell. Oh, God, he wrote a textbook for them, didn't he? And then you start digging and diving. There's an excellent woman, forget her name, but she started it up herself. She sounds quite posh and plummy, but she's looking at all where the government grants go and how many of these woke groups and universities get money for absolute drivel. And she says she starts off, yeah, that's it, Charlotte Gill. She was on a interview the other day, she recorded, and she says, always start from the grassroots, what's going on. And she says, when you look right the way up, it goes up to things like the UN and this global network. And then that ties in with the WDI getting these women from all around the world that would come on. I'm like, Jesus, God's sake, this is a globalist agenda. And then you think about the surrogacy and then all that. And oh, God, it's just a bloody mess. And the surrogacy is another one. It's a bit like the trans stuff. Oh, where's the harm? It's just a few people. Oh, kind, 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 kind. Once you open that can of worms, it's horrific. And it's just like treating women, your chattels, your bodies, your this, your that. It's, I don't know. I don't know.
The quote I just mentioned that we've put on the leaflets, apart from some really good information, we've finished with this, is from Simone de Beauvoir. And she said, never forget, it only takes a political, economic, or religious crisis for women's rights to be called into question. These rights can never be taken for granted. You must remain vigilant throughout your life. Very pertinent. I don't know if I was proud of it, but I fair enjoyed making my suffragette headbands. It was a way of directing my energies during COVID that I could do something. I was proud that I was so outspoken about it on Facebook. Twitter's different. Twitter's a bit more anonymous. Yeah, you can say anything there. But on Facebook, because I've got loads of Facebook friends, particularly loads that are from the SNP and all of that, who at first thought, oh, we can't say about this. Wheesht for Indie, which is where women won't wheesht came from, because it was all, oh, be quiet, we can't. But no, mention it, this is important. So I got a bit of the dog's bollocks from folk, mostly that I didn't know, that were, I wasn't caring. They could call me all they like. So I was quite glad that I was proud that I wasn't bothered. Yeah. And I'm quite proud of the friends I've got to know and working well with them. And also, I think I'm sort of proud's maybe the wrong word. Maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's I don't give a fuck. But now I just don't care if folk disagree with me. Whereas I think when I was younger, I'd be, oh, I'd take it more to heart. But then, even if that thought even creeps in, I think, no, I've got my granddaughters, I've got reality to think of. No, this is rubbish. And there's not a cat's chance in hell that I'll deny reality because it's a piece of nonsense. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud as well of all the women I know who managed to park other issues to come together on this as well. And sometimes, with some of them, because we disagree so much on other things, we've got to come down to a little bit of a jape and a little bit of a joke. Aye, aye, right enough, and then park it. But we do that because we realise just how important this is, and it's amazing what friendships you can get out of it. So that's nice. The positives are that I think in a few years' time, if it is all done and dusted, I can say, well, I did my bit. If to hell, I mean, I can't even contemplate that it's not done, but if it carries on, well, at least we tried. Um, it's just that we weren't prepared to park other things like political parties and wheesht for all that, or wheesht for an easy life, or just say nothing. What's that quote? All for evil to persist is that good men do nothing. Maybe I'm mentioning evil and man, but you know what I mean. You just can't just say, "Oh, it's not my business, not get involved here," because it's all our business. So I'm proud of that. And I've just got this thing. You speak to anybody in Scotland and you mention stuff to do with the Enlightenment, the home of all this critical thinking, developments in medicine, education system, and it's just past in the past tense, might I add. And it's just like that rational thought that unifies everybody in Scotland. Everybody I know thinks are proud of that. So why can't we get behind that? They'd have no truck with this rubbish. So I'd like more of that to come back. Yeah, and actually the other thing, because it is some of it's upsetting and having to read, online articles. Well, you don't have to be. Yeah, you kind of have to be informed of the worst of this to be able to fight it. Even as somebody who's got a background in social work, in community work, who studied sociology, even then if you keep to the basics, you can't change sex, fair enough, but there's so many ins and outs and roundabouts of what's going on. You kind of need to know so your arguments are up there. And the sad thing is innocent people tripping these fault lines and they're pummeled and harassed. So it gives somebody of a certain age something to do. So it gives you a cause to fight for, a noble cause. Oh, the other thing that I'd like to put a big shout out to, and I joined day one, is the Free Speech Union. And it's absolutely incredible what they do. Yet again, if you told me a few years ago, I'd be bigging up the Tory Toby Young. I'd have gone, never." But he's just done a brilliant job. I went to their event in Glasgow, and it was fantastic to see what they're doing. And that gives you courage, actually, to know that there's something like that there. J.K. Rowling, I remember thinking, why is she sticking her nib into the referendum? Now she's like the queen of all of us. Hooray for J.K., 'Cause she didn't have to do it. I know she's a wealthy woman and folks say she got money, but she had the love and adoration of fans. She didn't need to do that. And nobody's immune from getting nobbled, by some nutter. So she's had the death threats galore. So huge admiration for her. So seeing all these folk come into the fore, that gives you courage that they'll stand up and they're prepared to call it out. Something I'm beginning to think, how will we know when we're winning or when we've won? I mean, the Supreme Court was fantastic, and for Women's Scotland, where would we be without them? They've run a fantastic campaign, a tight ship. They're three great friends. What they've done is incredible, but inspires us all. But I sometimes think, Graham Linehan they tried to pay him off, take away his rights, chuck him some money so they could do the musical without him. Thankfully, he thought on it and said no. I think, oh, that'll be a sign we've really turned things around when Father Ted the musical, hits the theatres, especially the wokey world of theatre going. I was at a demo there at the weekend, and it was hilarious. Somebody from a theatre came charging across the road saying our banner was offensive. And shouldn't have said it to this particular turf because she's got bigger balls than anybody. Anyway, she goes, "What? Do you mean this one?" And it was the name Annie has a fanny one. "Oh yes, oh it's offensive." She goes, "It's true." So there's odd humorous times like that. Yeah. And at that very same event, if public were all coming out, that's great, well done, what you doing? Apart from the theatre worker charging across the street. Yet again, this is what we found in the stall again. The demographic who are most to think, oh, that's you awful turf bigots, tend to be young, middle class, university schooled women. Not entirely. That's the demographic that have it in for us women. It's really. But yet again, Orwell wrote about that in 1984. I don't know. It's just daft. We noticed kids from working class schools. Hey, get on, yeah, yeah, yeah. They were all supportive. Most men, very supportive. See, when you got one coming though with the what you call it, the man bun and the wokey attire, you thought, oh no, here we go. The Blue Rinse Brigade as well. They've got funny things in their hair or whatever. You thought, oh, here we go. I used to love all that in the 70s, David Bowie, Mark Bolan, Gender Bender. Now I'm turning like, oh, it's funny what it signifies, doesn't it? I think the Holyrood elections will be very interesting. Um, now I'll be going down a different avenue if I go down there. But no matter who's in, sadly, the likes of, Tess White, absolutely brilliant. Thought I've never voted Tory in my life, but hey ho, you was I'd vote for you. She's so good, and it's so sad that she's moving on. So there's a few of them in there that are brilliant that might not get back in. Fergus Ewan, he's spoken up. He's standing as an independent. Hopefully he'll get back in. Hopefully Ash Regan will get back in. But who knows? The party machines up here, they start plodding on, and I'm horrified that the Greens might get more. Oh God, lunatics. Sorry, Green Patty, you need to wake up and give yourself a shaking because you're off this planet. So, but it's quite interesting, isn't it? There's Green Party in lots of countries, so maybe that was one of the global conduits that they've done it through. Well, do you know where they came from? It was Playboy magazine is how they started. There was apparently Playboy magazine would have a serious article or a book paragraph, they'd run a book through, and there was one about overpopulation, right? So these guys had read it in their Playboy magazine and they met down the pub. So, and they said, oh, we've got to do something about this overpopulation. It was in England. And that's how the Green Party started. And they were the only party that supported the Chinese one-child state policy. And I think there is something anti-human about them. I think they obviously at the start, and some really ecologically minded, science minded people were in there, but a lot of them had left. And the Green Party women's officer in England, she's been treated terribly. Emma, isn't it? Emma, she's good. So yeah, they've obviously got some trans candidates in. We've got a woman up here who's originally from Germany. She goes, "That's what they'll be after. It's happened in Germany. Get a couple of them in the parliament, then it's oh poor us, poor marginalised. You can't vote against us." So I thought, oh for God's sake, well it won't stop us, because that to me they're not women, they're men. They're men in woman face. Enough off. I mean, I'd never go out and deliberately insult somebody. I'd never be rude, but faced with it, I'm never ever using wrong sex pronouns again to. But that was over 20 years ago, and that's when this didn't seem to be an issue. The other thing convinced me of that. There's a fantastic article about out there. Pronouns are Rohypnol, and I read that. Oh my God, that is so powerful. And when I started doing it in my own head with what I had done, you see things in a very different light. It's not that you change your opinion, you think that person's not a good person now, but it changes your whole outlook. So much of this is driven and policed in language, you know? It really is. If they weren't so stupid, they'd be smart. If they weren't so smart, I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean? It's like clever people following a stupid goal. And it is emperor's clothes. It really is. I don't think many of them believe it. They can't believe it. It's a load of guff. There's a few deluded folk, but the parliamentarians, they don't believe it. It's rubbish. And putting men in women's prisons. Disgusting. Brilliant book, The Women Who Wouldn't Wheesht, charts all that, how they focused on putting in men rapists and the rest of them into women's prisons first. If they cracked that, the rest would be easy. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. So, hey ho, who was the campaigner that fought for women's prisons? Elizabeth, somebody back in the day. I remember learning about her. It's just like, what the hell are they doing putting a rapist? It's like putting a flipping fox in the chicken coop. Nuts. And being around long enough, this just would not have occurred years ago. It just wouldn't. Nobody would have even thought of it. But all they do, they have this one little mind tweak and they go down this deluded purity spiral. All the writings of Wings Over Scotland. Now, folks, you might not be interested in Scotland. You might not even be interested in independence, possibly not. But go on to Wings Over Scotland and there's a search bar where you can look. You could just punch in trans or whatever, or women's rights or whatever, and by Christ, he's on it. For years, he's been on it. So there's some really well done articles on that, and he's got all the receipts, all the receipts. The other thing that was really influential to me was a program. It's on BBC Sounds, and it's called The Purity Spiral, and it's absolute. If you've heard of it, it's really good, isn't it? Um, knitting and teenage literature. And it's just like, oh my God, the way these purity spirals operates, like trans stuff. And obviously, the trans stuff now, you're seeing certain cancellations of trans groups and the crossover with other things, and they get cancelled. Jeepers creepers. Unbelievable.
You've been listening to Unsilenced Project.